Kaine and Warnock and Booker and Padilla. There he is. Okay, good. We're not all going to speak. Some of us are. But look, for the first time, this is the very first time today that Congress has been debating a bill to protect voting rights on the Senate floor, on the Freedom to Vote Act and the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement. And win, lose, or draw, members of this chamber were elected to debate and to vote. Win, lose, or draw, we are going to vote, especially on an issue as vital to the beating heart of our democracy as voting rights. Democrats have tried for months to hold a voting rights debate on the floor, but we have been blocked each time by Republicans. This is a step forward, but there's still a lot of work to do. Now, as we debate these measures, the Senate is going to confront a critical question. Shall the members of this chamber do what is necessary to pass these bills and move them to the President's desk? The struggle for voting rights is one of the sagas in America. In 1789, in most states, you had to be a white male Protestant property owner to vote. That might leave out most of the people here and here. And there we have had an inexorable push for the right to vote. The right to vote is vital, and both the proponents and opponents know it. I'm reading the biography of Grant. The white Southerners, the number one thing they wanted to prevent the freed slaves from doing is voting above anything else, because they knew it was power. And we've had steps forward, and then we've had steps back. And unfortunately, right now, with the Republican legislatures, we're in the midst of a large step back. So, Senate Democrats, we are going to fight the fight. Fight the fight. We're under no illusion. We know this is an uphill fight, especially when virtually every Senate Republican, to their shame, is staunchly against any legislation to protect the right to vote. But I want to be clear. When this chamber confronts a question this important, one so vital to our country, to our democracy, with its long history, you don't just say, never mind, it's too hard. You keep pushing, you keep working, you keep fighting. And that's what we've been doing, that's what we are doing, and that's what we will continue to do. It's been a long, hard road to get to this point. All the members here and many others, because this has been such strong strength in our caucus, unity in our caucus, have worked hard on these bills. The Senate spent an entire year drafting, considering, and debating voting rights legislation. Senate Republicans have spent the same amount of time refusing to negotiate with our members, including Senator Manchin, or even debate this legislation. Over the past year, as you know, Republican-controlled legislatures have worked to pass legislation that would make it harder for Americans to vote following the president's big lie. And it's particularly aimed at people of color, at poor people, at young people, at disabled people, at elderly people, at people who live in cities. It's not aimed across the board. You know that, and we know that. It's an effort to jaundice the entire election process. If the Senate cannot protect the right to vote, which is the cornerstone of our democracy, then the Senate rules must be reformed. Must be reformed. If the Republicans block cloture on the legislation before us, I will put forward a proposal to change the rules to allow for a talking filibuster on this legislation, as recommended by a number of our colleagues who have been working on this reform for a long time. Historically, changes to the Senate rules have been necessary to adapt to changed circumstances. Even Senator Byrd, a traditionalist, said just that. To address voting rights in a timely fashion, there's an opportunity to do exactly that, to change the Senate rules, to promote a public debate that is restorative of the Senate's long-standing two-speech limit. we feel very simply, on something as important as voting rights, if Senate Republicans are going to oppose it, they should not be allowed to sit in their office. They got to come down on the floor and defend their opposition to voting rights, the wellspring of our democracy. And there's broad, strong feeling in our caucus about that. Once members of the minority party have exhausted all of their speaking rights and defended their position on the Senate floor, the debate will have run its course, and the Senate will move to vote on final passage at a majority threshold, which has always been the threshold for final passage. I hope every senator will embrace this practical reform. Dr. King said to us, keep fighting. They tried to pass voting rights bills year after year after year. 1964, they couldn't get it. They kept fighting, and they got it in 65. This process today is another step forward in the march to voting rights. We ain't giving up. You're going to hear from us plenty as we continue on this issue. And again, to anyone who says, oh, well, you may not win, don't do it, look at history. Look at history. If you keep fighting, the cause of justice, as Dr. King has said, will be renewed. He used to quote Amos, let justice flow down like the mighty waters. The mighty waters will flow down. You can't stop them. They can be diverted, they can be delayed, but if you keep fighting, they can't be stopped. And we are not stopping. We are not stopping. This is too important. This is sacred. This is vital. This is not just a political fight, which some people like to just talk about. It is a fight for the soul and the future of America. And we are strong, dedicated, and enthusiastic to continue that fight. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much.
Who has, by the way, done a great job as head of the Rules Committee in helping us lead this fight.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Chuck, and thank you to the incredible leaders gathered today, as well as our entire caucus. I just came back from Ukraine, and we were there, a bipartisan group of senators, to say we stand with that democracy against a dictator who is, as we speak, threatening to invade that country. It is America that comes in time and time again around the world to stand up for democracy. And we are here to stand up for our own democracy. And I know there's a lot of cynicism out there about everything that's happening right now in the country, the polarization. But you know what? If we just fold to that cynicism, the American people lose, because we know every step of the way what's been happening. It is a concerted effort across the country to limit the right to vote, because even during the middle of a raging pandemic, Americans voted in record numbers. They voted because they were able to vote by mail like they had never done before. They voted because they were able to do things like same-day register. And now, step by step by step, starting with Raphael Warnock's state of Georgia, they are pulling back those rules. One of my favorite examples is one that doesn't get any attention. That's Montana. For 15 years, same-day registration. 15 years, the last election, 8,000 people took advantage of it to either change their address or to register anew. Taken away. What does that do? Maximize confusion for voters, because suddenly that right is taken away on Election Day, and then makes it harder for them to vote. That is what this is about. So some of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, I know some of you have been watching these speeches, and I'm pretty appalled by it. Because if you look at history, actually, history shows, and my friend Senator Merkley, who is the expert on this and will tell you this, is not nearly as clear as they are making it. And in fact, there have been 160 carve-outs to the filibuster. There have been waivers. There have been changes of rule. They have changed the rules for things like making it easier to turn down arms deals. That's not a 60-vote margin. Republican priorities like reducing taxes under Bush and Trump. 51-vote margin, right? Reconciliation. Trying to roll back regulations like they did with the Affordable Care Act. Once again, rolling back regulations, 51-vote threshold. Putting on U.S. Supreme Court justices, 51-vote threshold. So basically what they're saying is our priorities are out there. We've found ways to adjust the rules. But when it comes to the voters of this country, what are we going to do? We're going to throw a wrench into the process, put it off the rails, and guess what? You voters, we're just going to throw you under the Senate desk because we're going home, as they have done repeatedly, without a debate. It is actually Henry Cabot Lodge who once said this. He said, and I think I got this quote from your speech, Chuck, because I liked it so much. He said,
Give Henry Cabot Lodge the credit.
okay, I'll try. To vote without debating is perilous, but to debate and never vote is imbecile. And that's what they are asking us to do right now, to just go on and debate and say things and never get to a vote. History is our guide in two ways. History is our guide by the changes that have been made to the Senate rules, and history is our guide in that we stand up for people, and we never give up. A great man once said that disappointment is finite, but hope is infinite. We will not give up.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. And now our historian and our expert on delving into the arcanity of these rules, and very effectively, is Jeff Merkley.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chuck, and to my colleagues standing here saying that our oath to the Constitution really means something, because that Constitution is founded on the foundation of every person's right to vote. And in each generation, we have to nurture, restore that foundation, and that is what our task is now. My colleague who has led the Rules Committee so ably just quoted Henry Cabot Lodge. He was in the House from Massachusetts, a Republican, and he proceeded to say what we are seeing happen after the Civil War, in which fences are being erected to prevent targeted groups from voting, from creating fences to keep black Americans from voting, is absolutely wrong. And the House had I spoke too long on the floor today. The House had a debate, and that debate on the Lodge bill said, you know what? The federal government is going to make sure the elections are fair across this land. Every one of us from any given state has a stake in the fairness of all the other states, because that's the only way that there's equal representation in the House and in the Senate. And so in that year, the House spoke loudly, and I'm ashamed to say not a single Democrat voted for that bill in the House. It was entirely Republicans, but they passed it, and it addressed federal supervision for registration, federal supervision for conducting the election, and federal supervision for counting the votes to make sure integrity across this land, more than a century ago. And then the bill came over to the Senate the following year in 1891, and it died because we could never get to a final vote. It was filibustered. Well, what Chuck Schumer is saying is it is time to make sure that we have a debate on final passage, not just on this amendment or that amendment, but on final passage. That we have every person accountable to the public on where we stand. And what happened in 1891 introduced 75 years of entrenched discrimination in our land, 75 years of trampling rights until the 1965 vote was passed, voting rights was passed. Generations may flow from us now in which the rights of Americans are trampled if we do not act. Now, it is the day to quote Henry Cabot Lodge. He said, if citizens of the United States are entitled to vote, are deprived of their rights, it is the duty of Congress to interfere. He continued, if congressional elections anywhere are tainted by fraud or corruption or perverted by violence, it is the duty of Congress to interfere. And I say to you all today, it is our duty to interfere at this moment with any process that prevents us from defending the most fundamental rights of Americans, to take on the dark money, to take on gerrymandering, and most importantly, to defend that beating heart of America, the ballot box.
Thank you, Jeff. Our last speaker will be somebody whose state has been through so many different awful changes in the voting law. Senator Raphael Warnock.
Thank you so much, Leader Schumer. This is a moral moment in America. I was at my church yesterday, the Ebenezer Baptist Church, where we held our annual service in memory of Dr. King, and I can tell you that in Georgia and all across our country, politicians did yesterday what they do every year. They lined up and they offered platitudes and praises to Martin Luther King Jr. On MLK weekend, everybody loves Martin Luther King Jr. And I have to sometimes sit there and wonder who they're talking about. And it is because as we have pushed forward this debate on voting rights, I've been hearing arguments against this legislation, and those arguments have sounded uncannily familiar to me as a student of the civil rights movement, and I was asking myself why. And then I realized that as Dr. King and others were pushing forward civil rights and voting rights, people didn't necessarily stand up and say, no, we don't believe black people should vote. What did? They pushed forward states' rights arguments. And these are the kinds of arguments that I've been hearing in this chamber in 2022. Let us be very clear. The legislation that we are proposing provides a baseline of standards that ensures that every eligible American can vote. The states still administer their elections. And as the pastor of Ebenezer Church, where Martin Luther King Jr. preached, I take great umbrage with members of this body who are arguing that somehow this is a federal takeover. They are marshaling old states' rights arguments, the same arguments that Faubus used, Governor Faubus, in response to Brown versus Board of Education. The same arguments used by Richard B. Russell of Georgia when he wanted to stand in the way of civil rights. The same arguments used by Strom Thurmond when he had the largest filibuster in the history of the Senate arguing against voting rights. What did he argue? He argued for states' rights. And that's what we've been hearing in recent days. And so let the message go out. You cannot remember Martin Luther King Jr. and dismember his legacy at the same time. You can argue whatever side you want, but you do not get to argue both sides. You do not get to offer praises and plaudits, praises and platitudes in memory of Dr. King, and marshal the same kinds of states' rights arguments that were used against the civil rights movement and against Martin Luther King Jr. And so this is a moral moment. And you have to decide. Now, we're one nation. E pluribus unum, out of many one. And that's what voting rights ensures, that people from various backgrounds get to speak. And at the end of the day, the people have their say. And right in Georgia right now, they're trying to get rid of ballot drop boxes in the middle of a pandemic. Why? Who does that serve? Who are they trying to help? Come on, give me a break. Who are they trying to help by proposing that they get rid of drop boxes in the middle of a pandemic? They're trying to take over the Fulton County Board of Elections. We know what they're up to. And everywhere I go in Georgia, my constituents are saying, stand up for voting rights, stand up for the voices of the people. The democracy belongs to them and not the politicians. And that's what I intend to do, and that's what we intend to do.
Senator Kaine is going to speak in a minute. I just wonder, remember what Mitch McConnell said after you heard from Raphael Warnock? There's no effort at voter suppression in the states. Can you imagine that? Shame on him. That is equal to Donald Trump's big lie. Equal to Donald Trump's big lie. Senator Tim Kaine has been great in this effort to try and bring us all together. He's our last speaker.
So we all get to decide what kind of senator we want to be. For 50 years, my Senate seat was held by Harry Byrd Sr., who was a governor of Virginia and then senator, and then Harry Byrd Jr. On Saturday, I was at the inauguration of a new governor in Virginia, and I passed by the spot where up until about 6 months ago, there was a statue of Harry Byrd Sr., a governor who had done a big highway and infrastructure bill, a governor who had helped create the Shenandoah National Park system. Statue was taken down. Harry Byrd Middle School in Henrico County was renamed 5 years ago to Quioccasin Middle School. Why? He did these good things like the highway building. His statue was taken down because he led massive resistance against Brown versus Board of Education, because he supported school closures that deprived kids of education in Prince Edward County for 5 years, and because again and again and again on the floor of this body, from the seat that I occupy, he and then his son filibustered against civil rights legislation, especially voting rights legislation. We all get to decide the kind of senator we want to be. I want to just say one thanks to Chuck. Not only thank you for this entire effort, but Chuck, in listening to colleagues, and not just Democratic colleagues, Republican colleagues too, has decided that the rule reform proposal that we'll grapple with tomorrow is not an abolition of the filibuster or a reduction of the filibuster. It's instead switching a secret filibuster into a public and transparent filibuster, so everyone on this floor can be held accountable for their actions, and that's as it should be. Thank you.
Well said. Summing up just to add what Tim said, sorry, glasses and mask. Just summing up what Tim said, a senator's job is to vote. And on an important issue like this, to vote. And we believe that this vote will actually help propel us forward. And it's one of the reasons we're doing it. And one other thing, as you heard from the great speakers here, and from Corey and Debbie and Alex in the caucus, I've never seen more passion in our caucus on this issue. This is just passionate with our members for the reasons you heard. We'll take a few questions. Yes.
Senator Schumer, I wonder if you'll talk to us just a little bit about Manchin's message to all of you tonight. And since you have also been at the NRSC twice, you know that there will be political backlash against both Manchin and Sinema. We're already seeing it with Emily's list. Are you prepared for that when they're up in 24?
Look, I'm not getting into the politics. The vast majority of our caucus strongly disagree with Senators Manchin and Sinema on rules changes. The overwhelming majority of our caucus knows that if you're going to try to rely on Republican votes, you will get zero progress on voting rights right now. Zero. Yes.
I just want to clarify to make sure I understand it correctly. So the rules change we propose would be to go to a talking filibuster, but just for this piece of legislation?
Correct.
And do you have any optimism that you might still convince all 50 members of your caucus?
We're always fighting day by day and week by week and minute by minute. It is so important to us. Yes.
This is a critical moment for democracy and a
It is.
moral moment.
Yes.
Would you support efforts to primary Senators Manchin and Sinema?
I'm not getting into the politics. This is a substantive, serious issue. Yes.
Senator Schumer, obviously black voters were a major part of Senator Warnock getting elected, Senator Ossoff getting elected, plenty of President Biden getting elected. What do you say to black voters that they turned out in earnest for Democrats, and Democrats can't even get a policing bill finished? They can't come to an agreement on voting rights. What do you say to black
Well,
voters?
look who's stopping both of those bills, and Cory Booker knows. Republicans. Republicans. We don't have a single Republican to allow us to go forward and debate, except once. We don't have any Republicans supporting this. And I was at a lot of MLK commemorations yesterday. The African American community is passionate about us continuing to fight. They, better than anyone, know setbacks, but they don't stop fighting until they win. And that is infused in our caucus. Yes.
Mail-in ballots, drop boxes, those are among some of the provisions that are in this bill. However, those started off as pandemic-related measures back in the day, and they were supposed to be temporary. How exactly did they fight racism at the time if they were supposed to be temporary and they weren't?
Okay, whoa. First of all, mail-in balloting has been the way of voting in the state of Utah. It hasn't been temporary, and that is one red state. Do you want me to, are you talking or am I? I'm talking. And mail-in balloting has been the way of life in many, many states, red, blue, and purple. And one of the things we've learned from the pandemic is that it's actually incredibly helpful in a pandemic, but it's also made it easier for people to vote. So what has gone on in some states is they've rolled back the very things that will make it easier to vote, leading to more and more, as I pointed out, confusion. The other thing it's important to know, and the reason I use the example of Montana and same-day registration, is they are also rolling back things that have long been the law in states. They basically, to quote a North Carolina court regarding a law a few years ago, are discriminating with surgical precision by looking at each state and figuring out how did more people vote this way? Well, let's change that. Oh, 70,000 people registered to vote in the state of Georgia during the runoff period. So let's do two things. Let's reduce the runoff period, which they have done, Senator Warnock, and then let's not allow same-day registration, not same-day, registration during that period. That's exactly what they've done. So I can give you numerous examples of both ways. They've rolled back things that they changed during the pandemic, like witnesses for mail-in ballots in South Carolina. Then they took that away, and things that were put in place even before the pandemic. But no matter which way they did it, it all adds up to one thing, and that is voter suppression and limiting people's freedom to vote.
And voter suppression aimed not at the general population, but at particular populations, particularly people of color, urban people, etc. Oregon, just state, students, young people. Oregon has had mail-in voting for 30 years, long before the pandemic, ma'am. It also has the highest or second highest after Minnesota percentage of people participating. Isn't it good to have a high percentage of people participating?
Second highest.
Manu, you get the last question.
Senator Manchin suggested to us that Democrats don't have their priorities straight. Voters are concerned about inflation, the economy, COVID. Should you not be using your majority to focus on those issues rather than ones that you know is doomed to fail?
We've answered that question a whole bunch of times. This is so sacred and so important. The right to vote is the wellspring of our democracy. We're not abandoning the other issues. We can do more than one. But to abandon voting rights, when you have seen how important it is in the country, when it is the wellspring of our democracy, when it is so vital to bringing full equality in this country, and racism has been the poison of America, would be a disgrace. We're not abandoning it. We will do other things as well. Thank you, everybody.